All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get everything kicked off here. We're bringing everyone a very special version of our cloud migration webinar. We'll have a couple of uh, members of our Valiantys team here to talk more about some upcoming changes with Atlassian billing. So without further ado, we'll get started. My name is Cody Berenson. I am an Atlassian certified expert here at Valiantys, and I have David Mitchell sitting to my left. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Cody. I'm David Mitchell. I'm an Atlassian certified professional and an Atlassian consultant working primarily with migrations here at Valiantys.
Yeah. And then also we've got Rachel O'Neill. She is also an Atlassian certified professional. She is a pre-sales solution engineer. She'll be speaking later with Fritz, and we have Fritz Ruhe, a business development manager with Valiantys, here to help run through some new events or some new changes that'll be coming, and we'll dig into that here a little bit later. So moving right along, we're going to kind of move a little bit faster than we would on a normal webinar through some of the process of a successful migration. And that will allow Rachel and Fritz to talk a little bit more about the upcoming changes from Atlassian. So without further ado, spend just a quick moment talking about some announcements. We have a cloud migration workshop October 24th. That's just over a month away. This will be an early morning one, so we're doing this from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time, and that includes breakfast delivered. So a great benefit to joining the workshop is you can get some breakfast delivered straight to your house. So if you have any questions, obviously throughout the entire webinar, feel free to post those to the Q&A. If you have anything specific to the cloud migration workshop, please include that as well. But Kylie will be posting a link to register for that as well during this webinar. So kind of stay tuned for that. Moving again, as I mentioned, we're going to move kind of right through some of the migration steps, what we want to cover. So I'm going to let David take over on this next slide.
This isn't the next slide
Oh, shoot. Did I click the wrong one?
No, this is the next slide. This
Okay.
is so I guess we didn't decide who was going to speak to this slide.
Oh.
Let's just go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, we just kind of covered that. All right. Now David will speak to the cloud migration roadmap.
So this is the cloud migration roadmap that is provided by Atlassian. Actually, there are these 6 phases of any migration, and these 6 phases are also going to serve as the outline for our webinar today. So we will be stepping through those. A couple quick notes on these. The first 3, assess, plan, and prep, those are fairly lengthy steps, actually. And similarly, we will be taking more time talking about assessing and planning and prepping in the webinar today. Testing and the actual migration and the launch are fairly short, quicker steps. And so we'll be spending some time, but less time on those. Depending on the complexity of your migration and the decision-making process of your organization, your migration process can take anywhere from 2 to 12 months. And a couple of points within this process. One thing is to start early with getting your InfoSec team involved in the conversation. Your InfoSec team needs to be we've seen situations where a migration process is, about halfway through, and then InfoSec comes in and says, "Hold on, we haven't approved this," and kind of thrown a wrench into it. And we have definitely seen that happen. So get InfoSec involved at the very beginning of the process. Get them get their approval and sign off. And we have some information that you can give to. There's a link for InfoSec that we'll provide a little bit later in the webinar that they can look at to get their questions answered. So we're going to move on, and Cody is going to explain to us next why migrate to cloud.
All right. So one of the main kind of reasons to look at migrating to cloud. So Atlassian announced a while back that there will be an end of life for the server, Jira Server support. So that is in February of 2024. So we are just kind of right around the corner from that. But also there are some really amazing cloud features that come from Jira Cloud just natively. And so it's really great to have an additional feature set available to your team. These would be features that are not necessarily available in server. They may have to be added with an add-on in order for them to function. But they're always they're constantly rolling out. Atlassian is constantly rolling out new features, improved functionality, just better use on the cloud products. So they're focused heavily on cloud. That's not to say that there isn't still development happening within data center, but cloud is definitely where the most feature-rich kind of enhancements are headed to. So we're going to jump kind of right into the next main topic here, which is what can I migrate to cloud? And I'm going to turn that over to David here for a brief glimpse.
All right. So one of the common questions that everyone asks when they're looking at this process is, what products can I migrate to cloud and what can I not? And on this slide here, we see a variety of just the inventory of Atlassian products, whether they're cloud-based or server-based. And what we have outlined in the green circles are products that that are server products and have an avenue to be migrated to cloud. So in the case of the Jira products, Jira and Jira Software and Jira Core and Service Desk, those all have cloud analog products. Bitbucket, there's not a let's see. Bitbucket and Confluence can also be migrated to cloud. The items that are in blue don't have direct analogs in the cloud. If you're on server and you're using Crowd, you may be familiar with that. There's a corresponding product in the cloud called Atlassian Access. On-prem Crowd is what you use for user management. Access is the corresponding cloud product, so you would use that. If you have Bamboo, there's not a corresponding cloud product for Bamboo, but the functionality of that is fulfilled by what is now Bitbucket pipelines. So Bitbucket pipelines is becoming more robust, and so that takes over what you would be using Bamboo for. These other items that are not circled are either strictly cloud products to begin with, or they're deprecated products. So those are items that are not on the table in terms of migrating. So the next slide, actually, we're not talking about cloud platform differences. We're going on to talk about subscription levels in cloud, and I'm going to speak to that. So one of the next big questions that people have is, what subscription level are we going to subscribe to and pay for in cloud? Before we dive into the content of the slide, I just want to say, just as a sort of a level set, just sort of help everyone out, what we as an overview. So you've got free, standard, premium, and enterprise. You have the Atlassian Access product that's available by subscription for the free, standard, or premium levels. If you subscribe at the enterprise level, you don't have to subscribe to Access because it's included. So with that said, I will tell you that what we see across the board, probably 80+% of our customers we see subscribing to premium with an Atlassian Access subscription. The number of customers that we have that use standard are just a smaller percentage of an edge case. Likewise, enterprise subscriptions, they were sort of a smaller edge case, but it's becoming more common now because we're having more customers that are in acquisition mode and are acquiring companies and pulling multiple instances together. But with that said, let's just talk quickly over some of the things that would affect your decision on which subscription level to subscribe to. First, let's talk about some of the major tipping points between standard and premium. Standard is It's really a sort of a bare bones subscription tier. For most customers, it's just not quite enough. There are some limitations to it. One is when it comes to automations, you're limited to 500 executions a month. In addition, as we look at premium, standard just doesn't have some of the things that premium has. And so, for instance, premium has a sandbox. If you're on a standard tier, you don't have a sandbox and you don't have an option to add that, as an extra. So for most companies, not having a sandbox or not having some sort of a test or development environment just isn't tenable. So that's one thing that tips them over the edge from standard to premium. Another popular one is advanced roadmaps. A lot of companies want to be able to do the higher portfolio level planning that advanced roadmaps provides, and that's not available as an add-on at the standard level either. So if you want that, you have to have premium. So that moves a lot of companies over to premium. Along with premium, you've just got some other nice things, like you have unlimited storage. There's actually a storage limit on standard. That you have the IP allow listing. The automations are better on premium. With standard, you can do automations within the scope of a single project, but when you move up to premium, you can do automations with across multiple projects. You basically have global automation capability. So for those reasons, that's why we see a lot of customers subscribing to premium with access. If you're going larger, if you're needing multiple instances in your organization and you don't want to repeat paying for licenses for the same users across multiple instances, then in that case, enterprise would be for you. When you have questions about licensing, feel free to talk to us here at Valiantys. Give us a call. We have people that work specifically with licensing, and it's a free service. They'll answer any of your questions. We can also get you a better price on your licensing than what you can get directly from Atlassian. And the benefit of that is that you have a relationship with an Atlassian partner. If you have questions, you can give us a call. So feel free to look on our website, give us a call, or reach out to myself or Cody or Fritz or Rachel by our emails. The next slide, we need to make sure what the next slide is also me, it looks like, I believe. Okay. Another question that we that's on everyone's minds is cost, of course. As what this graphic here shows is that when it comes to licensing, the cloud product is going to cost more in terms of licensing, but in terms of total cost of ownership, it's significantly less, as you can see, because when you're in the cloud, you don't have all of these other costs that you have when you're doing something on-prem. You don't have all of the infrastructure costs and the data center costs, and you don't have to have as many when you don't have the hardware costs. And and I don't need to over explain that because people generally understand that. So when it comes to costs, also though, let me show you something here real quick. Atlassian has this cloud savings calculator. It's a really cool tool. It allows you to compare the cost of your on-prem server products to cloud. So we'll just do a quick run through here. Say you've got Jira software, and say we'll just do something average, just small, say 300 users. And let's add another product, say Confluence server, and you got 300 users on that as well. and we'll do get your estimate. And what this does is this shows you the difference in the cost between self-managed and cloud, because it shows you your operational costs compared to the license. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference here. Now, what's also really nice about this tool, you see there's this link here, it says edit our assumptions. You can go in and these calculations are based on some assumptions. It says number of administrators, and you can say, well, we actually have 2 administrators and they make more than that. So we can change that and update the results. So this is a great configurable tool. I'm going to put this in the chat for you so you can grab that. Oh, somebody put it out there for me. Our producer, Kylie, in the control room did that. Thank you, Kylie. All right, so we'll get back to our slide presentation here. And Cody is going to pick it up here regarding the complexity of a migration.
Yeah, so one of the big steps that a lot of interested parties come with is what to expect as far as how long it'll take to migrate their data. So there's no one size fits all to that particular question. This graph does a great job of just kind of showing a little bit of what to expect. And so in here you can see complexity and time. So the lower complexity of your current server instance is going to lead to less time that the migration will generally take. When you start adding in, additional users, the size of the ecosystem, the number of apps migrated, the number of essential integrations, that's when the complexity starts going up, and that may increase more time. So it's very important. We go through a rigorous kind of process to determine what your environment looks like, so that way we can try to get you our best estimate. But from there, much of what we do, the general moving of the Jira data is not really the tricky part. It's when you get into, whoops. Sorry, guys, my mouse has got a mind of its own. When you get into the applications and trying to get that data to move successfully, that's where we spend a lot of our time working through trying to get all of that, in essence, kind of figured out and get to a nice, clean migration path, which we'll cover in a little bit. So as you got a brief preview, I'm going to pause for just a quick second to talk a little bit about us. So there's a lot of different partners that you can look at when you're exploring a server to cloud migration. So on our side, just a little bit about us. We are available throughout the world. We have 24/7 support in 2 different languages. We can work in any product. We can work on pretty much any platform. So we bring a great depth of knowledge and experience to all of these areas. In addition to that, here's a few different certifications you can see. I won't run through this entire slide, but you can see that we've partnered with Atlassian for quite a while. Since 2006, we received Partner of the Year 12 times, and we carry a number of different specializations, along with a great global presence, as I mentioned just a little bit earlier. So really kind of what makes us stand out, just to kind of end on that, and I know I'm going very quickly, which is that as we have kind of listed here, cutting edge curiosity. We're very interested. We work with a great group of people who are always looking to find better solutions and understand the products better. We're committed to value, so we're always looking to be better at everything we do, and our focus is on you, the customer. So we are our success is based off of your success, and so that's where we really try to focus our team and make sure that we get a nice result for all different parties at the conclusion of the migration. So I mentioned this just a little bit earlier, just to pause again. So we are offering a cloud migration workshop on October the 24th. The great thing about this it's basically this webinar on steroids. So we'll do a roughly 3-hour version. We'll cover these topics that are kind of listed here in the PowerPoint. Here's my mouse with a mind of its own again. And please feel free to join us for that. You'll get to see David and myself run through this again in more detail. And this is the one, if you remember from the much earlier slide, it comes with breakfast. So really great reason to kind of tune in. So moving right along. I'm going to switch this back over to David to talk about another fun aspect of your migration, which is user management.
So in your migration process, this probably will come as a surprise, but one of the biggest challenges and considerations that you will have is in the area of managing users. not only in not only just the process of managing your approach to managing users in the cloud, but in terms of managing users through the migration process. It turns out to be quite a bit of work, actually, um, as you're planning and working through your migrations and your test migrations. And the reason for that is because in the cloud, um, a user's email address is the unique identifier for each user. So on your server, before you migrate to cloud, every user account has to have an email address and it has to have a unique email address. And as I'm sure you're well aware, um, your user base on your Jira server is not in that state. And we run into this all the time. Part of the characteristics of managing users on server is that an email address is not even required. So it's common to have users that don't have an email address assigned on server. It's also common to have users with, well, invalid email addresses. It's also common to have a lot of users that are sharing an email address. You'll have a user they have more than one login. They'll have a login for admin and login for just their general use. We'll see companies that have quite a few service accounts, and say they have several service accounts set up, and all of those will have the same email address. So the reason that all has to be resolved is because Atlassian's migration tool that we use, we configure it and it runs, and it actually carries out the process of moving your data from server across to the cloud. It does extensive checking on your data and the state of your server before it actually runs. And one of the things that it checks is the state of your users. And so the state of your users in terms of email address perfection is checked. And if it does not meet that email address perfection, the migration tool simply will not run. So it is a hard and fast barrier to migrating. It's a step that you can't skip. So in terms of user management going to cloud, you're also going to need to decide if you want to do manual or automated user provisioning. If you want to do automated user provisioning, naturally, like we mentioned before, you're going to subscribe to Atlassian Access. If you want to do single sign-on, which most companies do, you're going to need Atlassian Access for that. So that covers user management. The next slide, we're going to talk about testing the migration process, and Cody is going to talk to us about that. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Next up here.
So
Cody's going to talk to us about how we track work.
Yeah.
In the migration.
Big piece of what we do in any migration is have a very visible way to track work between our organization and the client that we're working with. And so these are just a few examples of some that we've used that have covered performing app assessments. We use the same tools that your teams use. We use a Kanban board to create work items and track work, and then we review that at a regular kind of meeting interval. The other thing is that what comes in work tracking is that we just want to make sure that we determine the best method in order to move your data. So again, this is all stuff that we cover in more detail in the workshop, but there's a few key different methods that we use. So whether that's you clean up your instance and bring it over, lift and shift, just bring it over as is, you do a phase approach, or maybe just a start fresh approach. Check in with us in about a month and you can learn more about each one of those. So this is a little bit in this brief view into some of the tools we use. We're going to jump right into the next stage, which is communication with your team. This is obviously going to be as important as the migration itself, which is prepping all your users. So you want to make sure that you have a very clear plan lined out to all of your users to understand what to expect as far as when they will stop using the server product and start using the cloud product. We have a number of different communication plans available within that, but then also that you come up with a plan to basically prep and test your server to understand how that data is going to migrate. So with that said, one big piece that we use in order to run those repeated tests is we create and review a runbook, which David will cover.
So whether you work with a partner, you do your migration yourself, you're going to need to create a runbook. And a runbook is basically an outline of every specific step in order down to the nth detail that you would follow, that you follow to execute your migration. Ideally, you need your runbook in a state to where you could hand it off to someone else who has never seen it before, and it would be documented well enough to where that person could execute those steps. As you test your runbook, that helps you establish your timeline. You're able to see how long each step takes, and so that allows you to plan your actual migration window, whether it be over a weekend, or if you have a blackout time during a Thursday and Friday. So make sure that you create a run book, uh, test that run book, tweak it, and use that to establish your timeline.
All right. So after we get that run book created, we're going to do repeated testing. Our goal is to have a repeatable positive result, so that way we know exactly what the migration process is going to look like. That may take a lot of time depending on the complexity of your environment. But our goal is, again, to develop that run book and get to a clear path where we know what to expect when it comes down to your actual migration window. So the next big step is UAT.
After you've done your migration testing, you need to do user acceptance testing. So what you do in order to do that is select your UAT group from key managers, stakeholders, and users. Select a lot of common day-to-day tasks and have them test those and make sure everything is working correctly. Naturally, have them test workflows. Workflows is the heart and soul of Jira. Everything runs on a workflow. So make sure all the workflows are working and review the screens. After you've completed your testing, you'll be ready to take your next step. After you've actually passed UAT and everything's okay, you're ready to take your next step, which is the actual migration. So in order to do the migration, pick the date and arrange for Atlassian support. Atlassian is going to want to know about your migration, and they're going to want to know when you're migrating, and so they will have support set up to be ready to help you with anything that should happen to come up. Communicate to your organization when the migration is going to happen, and then execute your runbook. Make sure make sure you've completed your pre-migration checklist and you've tested the migration, and then you can execute the runbook. And then after that, you can do whatever it is you've decided in terms of deprecating your server, whether it be setting the server to read only or actually shutting the server down.
All right, and then that leaves us with the last little bit, which is launch. This is the exciting part. So this is when we finish the migration. Your team is now ready to access and start using it. So at that point, you want your team to QA the instance, one last kind of final check that everything looks good. Then we do a go, no-go decision to determine that we are moving forward. If, say, that something either went wrong or there was a change that needed to happen, we would have a rollback plan that could restore your instance to what you were used to prior to the migration. And then from there, it's just monitoring, mitigating any issues that pop up. And the last big thing is celebrating. This has generally been a big journey as we've gone along. We've had migrations that take anywhere from 3 months to maybe even a year. So this is a huge moment. So celebrate the win, start using the product, and start using that new feature-rich environment. And that's the general, very quick 30-minute overview of a migration, server to cloud migration that you could expect. At this point, again, this is a unique webinar for us. We're doing an abbreviated version of the migration process. I'm actually going to turn this over to Rachel and Fritz for Atlassian's big announcement. And Rachel and Fritz, I know I did kind of a brief introduction at the very top of this webinar. Please take a few moments to introduce yourselves and share a little bit more about yourself. I don't know if I did you guys enough justice at the very start. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you guys are off.
Thank you so much, Dave and Cody. Really appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone on the line right now and watching us. Really appreciate your time as well. Again, please feel free to put any questions in the chat and we will get to them as soon as we can. I'm actually going to have Fritz introduce himself first, and then I'll take it from there.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you're calling in from. My name is Fritz Ray. I'm a 10-year Atlassian veteran in terms of being in and around selling Atlassian tools. So happy to help address any questions that you have. And you're in fantastic hands with Rachel as she presents some of Atlassian's announcements here. So I'll hand it back to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Fritz. And again, my name is Rachel O'Neill. I'm a pre-sale solution engineer, and I have been working with Atlassian and Jira on and off for about 10 years myself. I've been in IT for about 20 years, and I've been with Valiantys for a little over a year. If you were to join with Valiantys on a cloud migration journey, I may be one of the solution engineers placed with you, as well as our sales rep, to help guide you through that process. And if there are any questions about me or what Fritz and I do, please feel free to let us know and we'll get right back to you. That said, let's talk about this very important Atlassian announcement. So starting from October 18th, 2023, Atlassian is scheduled to implement price adjustments for the following cloud products: Jira Software, Confluence, Jira Service Management, as well as Atlassian Access. I do want to say something about Atlassian Access. That applies to user tiers over 1,000. So this increment will be across all tiers, including standard, premium, and enterprise plans. It will also apply to commercial, academic, as well as community licensing. So with that, it's a pretty big announcement. In general, this tends to happen right around this time for Atlassian. So let's talk about a couple of things, because you see the date of October 18th, and it might scare some folks. So one thing that's important to note, we can lock in pricing for 90 days with a quote up until October 17th. So to do that, this is what you would need. You would need to spin up a cloud migration trial site. Once that trial site is spun up and the domain of your choice is claimed, then you will need to add all Atlassian products and all marketplace plugins and applications that you need or that you think you will need going forward. If you were to, so basically once your trial site is set up with all of your products and all of your plugins, then you'll need to make sure that you don't change it after we generate a quote. You can change it up until October 17th, but you need to let your rep know that you've changed something, because it will delete the quote and we can't get that back. So again, just an overview to lock in pricing so that you have a solid 90 days to discuss this with your team. You will need to spin up a cloud migration trial site and add any and all Atlassian products and plugins. And once that's completed, then we can generate a quote for you that will be locked in from 90 days until the date of the actual quote.
And I wanted to provide one clarity there, Rachel. So I've gotten different information on this, and we can certainly get back to the folks on the call here. My understanding is the extension of 90 days is for renewing customers. So because I've looked into this, for net new customers that are buying cloud, we technically can only, they will auto extend to by 30 days, meaning if I got you a quote on October 17th, November 17th would be the expiration date of that quote, and then there's no more extensions. So I just want to make sure renewals are 90 days. A net new is really a month from October 17th. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, but I'd rather forewarn everyone on the call.
That's a great call out, Fritz. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So one other thing we want to mention here too is, though these, and we're going to talk about the increases on the next slide here, but before we get to that, one thing I do want to mention is we have deal financing and price financing. So if there are issues with paying all at once, we can put that into different categories of payment. So just so you know, that's an available, a product that's available through Valiantys. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let's talk about the list prices. We're talking about for Jira Software Cloud for standard, premium, and enterprise, we're looking at a 5% lift for all paid tiers. For Jira Service Management Cloud, also again for standard, premium, and enterprise, we're looking at a variety of different adjustments. So one of the smallest is from the 0 to 250 agent tier. We're looking at a 5% uplift. From 251 to 500, we're looking at a 30% increase there. And then you can see the prices for all the other agent tiers there. For JSM Enterprise, we're looking at 20%. JSM Standard from the 501 to 1,000 tier for agents, we're looking at 25%. Jira Standard 1,001 plus, a 20% uplift. Jira Service Management Premium from 501 to 2,500 agent tier is a 25% uplift. And JSM Premium 2501 and above is at a 20% increase. For Confluence Cloud, for Standard Premium and Enterprise, it's a 5% increase for all paid tiers. For Access, again, less than 1,000 users, there is no uplift in price. For 1,000 and above, we're looking at a 10% increase. So one of the things that I know is going to be asked is, why are the prices increasing? And there will be more to come on that in the following weeks. But one thing that I will definitely mention is enhanced features and services. Over the last 2 years, Atlassian has truly built up cloud to be a powerhouse tool for all things project management and service management. The automation, the asset management within JSM functionality, even within Confluence, which is, not a horribly complicated tool. They've added so many features to Confluence just in the base tier too. They've done a lot of work making sure that cloud is more secure. They've added HIPAA compliance to a lot of areas. They really have bolstered cloud in so many different ways, and that is one of the main reasons for this current uplift. They are making constant improvements, and I highly encourage everyone on the call to review the Atlassian roadmap to see everything that's coming in the next 5 years. It's very exciting, and JSM and Jira and Confluence are still very competitively priced, especially for all of the functionality that comes with it standard, without having to purchase any additional plugins or modules or applications. Jira software, JSM, and Confluence in the cloud is truly a powerhouse tool. Fritz, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, one of the thoughts I'd have around this, because I have this conversation with customers every day, is as you think about, especially if you're trying to insulate yourself against these price increases, is to consider, if you're not planning to re-platform to another tool in the next 12 to 24 months, it does really make sense, especially depending upon where you fall in some of these price increases, to look at doing a multi-year agreement. Now, I get it. Most customers also don't necessarily have planned to do multi-years, and Atlassian does require the payment up front. So just to reiterate or highlight, if nothing else, for back pocket information for you, is that we do offer deal financing through Valiantys. So in the event that you want to take advantage of insulating yourself against that, we can help you there. And essentially, there is a cost of money for financing, right? But we acquire this software on a margin. So what we're able to do is bury some of that financing cost and try to make that a 0% scenario for you guys, if that's more important to you than a short-term upfront discount. So think about that as you guys look to acquire this software, because that's going to be key for you to help you guys avoid some of these impacts over the next month or two.
Thanks, Fritz. And also, one thing that I wanted to mention too is there will be some decreased cost for most of you who are moving to the cloud from server or on-prem, because some of those applications and plugins that you're currently using are no longer available in cloud because they are part of the cloud functionality now. So there is some savings to be had there moving from cloud that should mitigate some of this increase depending on your user tier. I just wanted to put that out there. Next slide, please. And our last slide that we'll be discussing today is Atlassian's announcement, how can we help you save money, from Valiantys too. So let's talk about dual licensing. Migrating customers can enjoy an extended free renewal of their server and data center licensing, providing you with up to 1 year of additional time while you're working through to your migration. So you don't have to pay for 2 separate buckets of licenses while you do that. There's also step-up credits. So the incentive to transition to cloud by crediting back unused server or data center maintenance, restrictions will apply, and we'll talk about that in a second, but that is also available. Multi-year contracts. So multi-year contracts allow you to get 24 months and lock in current pricing for a full subscription period. A 36-month contract with a 15% discount is also available under Atlassian's discretion. So that's something that we can talk about as well. But let's dive a little bit more into dual licensing. So the requirements for this are an annual subscription commitment. You have to have Jira Service Management with 250 or more agents. All other products must be in the 1001 plus user tier. This must be exclusively all for Atlassian products. Aligning the tier on the server and data center will help with the new cloud subscription tier. And we can also send more information on that if you have questions about the dual licensing. For the step-up credits, the incentive is by crediting back again the unused server or data center maintenance, and the requirements for that are you must have 201 plus users for Jira Software, Confluence, and Bitbucket Premium. Jira Service Management, you will need to have 51 plus agents. The original server and data center license must be purchased before February 2nd of 2021. Partners must raise a step-up credit, so we'll have to put that in just to make sure that they're aware of it. And then this is applicable only to cloud sites created pursuing this offer. This is also limited to Atlassian products only. And then the last main bullet is multi-year contracts. So we can benefit from a 15-year discount on a 3-year subscription term for migrating customers. We'll be collaborating with our Atlassian reps for this, and it's required to secure approval. The option should remain, and the requirements for this is migration of existing server and data center customers to cloud, upfront payment for a 3-year subscription. Again, we can also do deal financing for this. Jira Service Management at 250 plus agents is necessary, and all other products must have a 1001 plus user tier. This is for migration from server and data center to cloud, and this also includes active maintenance with or within 30 days of expiration. We can also give exclusive discounts on Atlassian products. Are there any questions from the audience that we need to answer? I don't see any here. Fritz, do you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of saving money?
No, I mean, I think you covered it there. And when I think about the dual licensing, that's a good opportunity, especially if you guys are on the cusp of in the next couple months facing down a renewal. I'd rather throw good money to good money as opposed to renewing something that you may not see that money back. Now, obviously, there's the step-up credit program, but that doesn't necessarily apply to all customers. So if you don't fall into that step-up credit opportunity and you know you're going cloud, but your renewal's impending, you probably want to look into that sooner than later and use those funds towards acquiring cloud as opposed to renewing your legacy tools.
Thank you, Fritz. That brings me to the end of our part of this presentation. And thank you very much for joining. We really appreciate your time.
Okay, do we have any questions regarding migration or anything that we've talked about today? If feel free to post those in the Q&A chat. One question that we commonly get is, do I have to leave server? And technically, no, you don't have to actually leave server. Your server is not going to stop working. You can continue to use server in the state that it is in indefinitely. You just will not be receiving any updates or security updates for it at that point. Also, you would not be able to increase your user tier on server if you should need to. That was already answered via text. Okay. We do have some questions here. We have both Jira and Confluence on-prem server implementations. We are moving both to the cloud. Do you recommend migrating both at one time, or is one at a time a better alternative? Let's.
And I chimed in on the answer panel there, but yeah, the honest answer is it depends on your scenario. But many customers do migrate at the same time. It's just probably indicative upon your ability to absorb potential downtime around that, right? And then the size of your instance as well, right? That's typically what we see. Sorry, I'm the least technical person, but I've been around this long enough to know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I mean, adding to that into this question, I would say we don't really recommend one or the other, because we just see it done both ways. We used to see doing them separately more often in the past, but what we're doing more commonly now is we migrate both of them at the same time.
And it really depends too. I mean, is there a business case for that too? Typically, most clients migrate everything at the same time, unless there is a business case to hold back Confluence or Jira for some reason. Maybe there are some groups that aren't ready to migrate yet, so they want to stay on server as long as possible, in which case we could start migrating some, but not all. But typically, we see most clients migrating both at once. It takes less downtime in general to do it all at once, and there's less breakage between the instances. If there are links between Confluence and Jira, there's some cleanup to happen there too. So it can be more complicated, and the work effort and cost can increase if you're migrating two Atlassian products at different times.
Another comment we have here in the Q&A is from James. He says, it's not so much a question, but he says, we did a major migration to the cloud with Valiantys. I cannot stress enough the need for a run book. It helped so much. Thank you for that, James. Also, another question that we often get is, how do I know if I need a partner? Can I do this myself? You can do it yourself. And when we do the webinar and we do the workshop, and let me just take a moment here to plug the workshop again. If you have a migration that's imminent at all, within the next year, the next few months, I can't encourage you enough to attend our migration workshop. It is far more than just a longer version of what we've done today. It's complete different outline. We have a panel of folks there, Cody, myself, and another one of our migration practice leads. It's very interactive and very conversational. We talk. It's very valuable. I recommend you do that. When we do these events, one of the things that I recommend is, we talk about running the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, Atlassian's migration tool, and we talk about everything that's involved, and people attend these events and they see that it's a lot more involved than they had anticipated. And one of the things that I recommend is, install the latest version of Jira Cloud Migration Assistant on your Jira, spin up a test site in the cloud, configure a migration in JCMA, and run it and see how it goes. And that will give you an idea of just what's all involved. And I mean, generally speaking, honestly, it's not a sales pitch, but migrations are not easy. They're difficult, and if you have any complexity at all, you're probably going to be better off having a partner that's experienced in migrations helping you out, whether it's us or any other partner. There's a lot of great partners out there. So, okay, we've got another question here. What is the best practice regarding migrating from data center to the cloud, specifically regarding IAM administration? To clarify, I've used Jira Cloud for over 3 years and understand how the IAM administration is done. However, coming from a data center environment, is there an option to sync on-prem AD to cloud, and then to choose to utilize AD sync over cloud IAM administration? Okay, I'm not following. I'm not familiar with the IAM acronym.
I think it's identity access management, as I assume what Jennifer's referring to.
Okay. So the process of migrating from data center to cloud is the same as server, but in terms of user management, what's typically, you need a cloud identity provider, and if you're using Active Directory on-prem, what we typically see is we see companies deploying Azure AD and syncing their Active Directory on-prem to Azure AD, and then integrating Azure AD with Atlassian Access for user management. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to let me know. Got a couple other questions here.
I think Rachel captured a couple of those.
Sure. So one of them is, a question was asked, we get this all the time, is how many migrations have we done and what is our most complicated case? The second part of that is quite a loaded question. We have completed more than 1,000 cloud migrations. In terms of the complicated cases, we've had quite a few. I know of a couple of different migrations where we have migrated more than 6 sites at once, and that was incredibly complicated. We recently won an RFP for another 4 different sites that are going into 3 separate new sites. So we get complicated cases almost every week. It's a usual occurrence for us.
And I think that's a good comment there. To the extent that you can control your migrations, right? There's a couple pointers that Rachel and I talk to customers about all the time, which is the opportunity in advance to collapse or reduce any plugins you're no longer using, right? Cleaning up your data sets before the migration are going to reduce orders of complexity, and also the target that you're landing in. Because if the target you're landing in already has data, you're introducing data collision, migration merge issues. So to the extent you can land in a greenfield target site, that will also help reduce complexities around your migration. So when that is not true, those become maybe the more complicated migrations, because it's a migration merge, just not a migration. And then the other facet is, with many Fortune 100 companies that we work with, there are very sophisticated scripting items that are being used that have to be refactored and recreated, as well as integrations, right, with third-party systems that are there. So those are the types of things that change it from being a simple Atlassian only migration to not being an easy, simple migration. And I would never encourage you to do it yourself.
No. And one thing I wanted to add there about not doing it yourself is, if you choose to do things yourself and you run into problems, typically it's going to take you at least a week or 2 to find the answer to fix whatever issue you ran into. Whereas with a professional services vendor such as ourselves, we've created tooling to fix so many different gotchas that have popped up over our 1,000 cloud migrations that we've completed. So we're aware of just about anything that can and will go wrong, and we can fix it immediately. So it saves time. And from a value perspective, if your bill rate is $100 an hour, expect to spend 20 hours trying to fix something and looking across the web for resources. With us, we can fix it in usually less than a day, kind of thing, or we can identify it immediately and know what the right course of action is to fix those issues. So again, another benefit for using a partner.
All right. Well, with that, we're not seeing any more questions. So
let's see, we'll wrap up here. Excuse me. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope this has been very impactful for you. It was really great to have some additional members of the Valiantys team here to both present and answer questions. So I guess in closing, what I'd say is please connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with us via email. If there's any questions you did not ask or anything that may come up later, these are great areas to connect with us and reach out with any question at any time. So I'll leave this slide up for just a little bit so you can take down any emails. But a couple of upcoming things that we've got going on here. We've got, let's see, let me open a few links here. So we have our upcoming events calendar. So if you hop over to our Expium page here, we've got a number of different events that'll be coming up. David and I will be, again, we'll be doing the workshop here in another month or so. And then we also have on our YouTube page, I'll take a moment to connect over to that. You can see that we have a number of different videos, both for migration practices as well as a number of different other practices that we specialize in here at Valiantys. There's some great videos where you can watch and see either events that we've done in the past, or maybe you just have a question about a particular area of practice around Jira. You may find something in here that may help meet some of those needs. So, so clicking back, again, please feel free to connect. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I thank you, everyone, for joining us today.